They say justice is served, that monsters are locked away, neutralized. But within these walls, beyond the public eye, a different code takes hold. A brutal, unforgiving reality where reputations precede you, and past sins demand a final, bloody reckoning. This is not about parole or rehabilitation. This is about the ultimate consequence. What happens when the most depraved among us, the serial killers, the child predators, the ruthless masterminds, face a judgment far harsher than any judge could hand down? What happens when they encounter the very violence they inflicted, multiplied, and returned? This is the chilling truth of predators, too evil to survive prison. We begin with a name etched into the darkest corners of human memory: Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. His crimes weren't just murders. They were acts of unimaginable depravity, dismemberment, necrophilia, cannibalism. He hunted the innocent, luring them to their gruesome fates, leaving a trail of shattered lives and a nation sickened to its core. When Dahmer was finally locked away in Columbia Correctional Institution, there was a collective sigh of relief. He was off the streets, seemingly neutralized. But Dahmer's presence, his chilling demeanor, and the very nature of his unspeakable acts festered within the prison population. The unwritten code of the yard, a brutal form of justice, was waiting. On November 28, 1994, while on a cleaning detail, Dahmer was cornered by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver. Scarver, reportedly disgusted by Dahmer's crimes and unsettling behavior, delivered a final, brutal judgment with a metal bar. Dahmer's monstrous life ended not by execution, but by the very violence he inflicted upon others. Was it a dark form of cosmic retribution, or simply the inevitable consequence of being the apex predator who suddenly found himself at the bottom of a new, more unforgiving food chain? From the twisted mind of a serial killer, we pivot to the calculated coldness of a crime lord, James Whitey Bulger. For decades, this South Boston mob boss ruled with an iron fist, extorting, dealing drugs, and ordering at least 11 murders. He was a master manipulator, even secretly informing for the FBI, betraying everyone he encountered. Bulger evaded capture for 16 years, becoming one of America's most wanted. When he was finally apprehended and sent to federal prison, many thought his story was over. But an 89-year-old mob boss, a known informant, doesn't simply fade away in the federal system. His long history of betrayal and violence created a ledger of enemies, and scores needed settling. On October 30th, 2018, just hours after being transferred to USP Hazleton, a known gang-infested prison, Bulger was found bludgeoned to death in his cell. The suspects, a mafia hitman and another inmate, both with direct ties to Bulger's long-standing rivals. The dapper Don, who orchestrated so many deaths, met a brutal, old-school mob demise. Was it inevitable for a man who lived by the sword, even in old age and behind bars, to die by it? There are some crimes that trigger an absolute primal revulsion, even among the most hardened criminals. Among the darkest crimes, some ignite a primal, absolute revulsion, even in the most hardened criminals. John Giogan was such an individual. A Roman Catholic priest, his horrific acts of child sexual abuse became not just a local tragedy, but a symbol of a devastating scandal that rocked an entire institution and shattered countless lives. His name became synonymous with betrayal of the most sacred trust. When Giogan was finally incarcerated, his fate within the brutal hierarchy of prison life was sealed. Child predators occupy the lowest, most despised rung. There is no honor among thieves when it comes to such vile acts. only a chilling, unofficial code of retribution. His presence was a festering wound within the prison walls, and many knew his time there would be perilous. In August 2003, at the Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center in Massachusetts, John Geoghegan was found brutally murdered in his cell. Another inmate, Joseph Druce, a convicted murderer with a history of violence, was held responsible. Geoghegan's death sent a chilling message through the system and resonated deeply outside of it. It was a stark, unsettling reminder that in the shadow world of incarceration, some acts are so unforgivable, so universally condemned, that those who commit them are deemed unworthy of even the most basic protection. It forces us to ask, in such a brutal, informal system, can we ever truly define what constitutes justice? The stories we're uncovering are dark and unsettling. If you're finding this exploration into the true consequences of extreme evil compelling, and you seek to understand the very edges of human behavior, then please take a moment to hit that subscribe button for Murk Files. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss another episode where we explore the darkest corners of human nature and unsolved mysteries. Your support helps us continue to bring these crucial stories to light. The name Albert DeSalvo sent shivers down the spines of Bostonians in the 1960s, the man who confessed to being the Boston Strangler, responsible for the murders of 13 women. While his confession remains debated by some, DeSalvo was undeniably a dangerous man, imprisoned for other sex offenses. His very presence, his notoriety, was a magnet for danger. In February 1973, in his cell at Walpole State Prison, DeSalvo was found stabbed to death. While another inmate was implicated, questions still swirl. Was it a power play, a drug debt, or was it silent retribution for the horrific reign of terror he was accused of? DeSalvo, a figure who embodied fear and mystery, ended his days in a pool of blood, another dark secret perhaps buried with him. Did his death bring any true closure, or merely deepen the shadows around his legend? Our next case brings us closer to the present, highlighting that this grim justice continues. Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler, was a calculating predator who stalked California's highways, raping and murdering at least 7 women. For decades, his victims' families sought peace, knowing he was behind bars. Kibbe, in his old age, found his final hours not in a hospital, but in the cell he shared at Mule Creek State Prison. In February 2020, the 80-year-old serial killer was found dead. His cellmate, another convicted murderer, was charged with his murder, claiming self-defense in a violent altercation. Kibbe, who inflicted so much suffering, ultimately succumbed to violence himself. Does the swift, brutal justice of the prison yard offer a twisted form of solace for the victims' families, or does it simply perpetuate the cycle of violence? Travel back to the 1920s to a crime that shocked an unsuspecting nation: the thrill kill of Bobby Franks by Richard Loeb and Nathan Leopold. 2 brilliant, arrogant young men who believed they could commit the perfect murder simply to prove their intellectual superiority. Loeb, the more charming and overtly depraved, masterminded the chilling plan. Their intellectual conceit didn't protect them from the harsh realities of Joliet Prison. In 1936, Loeb was found dead, his throat slashed, after an encounter with fellow inmate James Day. While Day claimed self-defense against a sexual assault, the full truth remains obscured by time and prison walls. The super-intellect who believed himself above the law met a violent, inglorious end, stripped bare of his privilege and his life. Was this the ultimate ironic lesson for a man who believed himself beyond consequence. Not all monsters are found lurking in dark alleys. Some operate in plain sight, in places of healing and trust. Donald Harvey, the Angel of Death, was a hospital orderly who confessed to murdering dozens of his patients, often by poisoning or suffocation. He was a silent, insidious killer, driven by a perverse desire for control over life and death. Harvey, who chose quiet, hidden methods of death for his victims, met a brutally public end in prison. In March 2017, at the Toledo Correctional Institution, he was severely beaten in his cell by a fellow inmate and died 2 days later from his injuries. The irony is stark and unsettling. A man who inflicted slow, unseen deaths ultimately succumbed to direct, brutal violence. Did this violent end satisfy a need for retribution, or merely highlight the endless cycle of violence that follows some individuals? Our final case introduces us to a different kind of monster, one who lured his victims not with force, but with a twisted charisma. Charles Schmid, dubbed the Pied Piper of Tucson, was a narcissistic figure who charmed and manipulated teenagers in the 1960s, leading some to their deaths. He reveled in his notoriety, a chilling blend of superficial allure and profound evil, burying his victims in the Arizona desert. But Schmid's manipulative charm held no sway within the walls of Arizona State Prison. In 1975, he found himself caught in a violent prison brawl, suffering multiple stab wounds that ultimately claimed his life. The Pied Piper, who orchestrated so much clandestine horror, met a chaotic and public end. For a man who reveled in control and manipulation, was this the ultimate brutal loss of agency? The stories of these men offer a chilling look into the final chapters of lives defined by extreme evil. For some, their violent deaths in prison were a grim satisfaction, a twisted form of cosmic balance. These cases force us to confront uncomfortable truths, that even behind impenetrable walls, a brutal justice often prevails. At Murk Files, we illuminate these shadows of human nature and its consequences. If these narratives captivated you, become part of our journey. Like this video, share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Murk Files now. For more chilling stories like these, click the playlist showing on your screen. Join us as we continue to shine a light into the darkness. Stay curious, stay safe,